Prophet Yusuf A.S. The journey to prison in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. The story of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him, is one of the most powerful stories in the Quran. It is a story of patience during hardship, faith during loneliness, and trust in Allah when the future seems completely unknown. After being separated from his father, betrayed by his brothers, taken to Egypt, and raised in the house of Aziz, Prophet Yusuf faced another great test. A test that would eventually lead him to prison. But prison was not the end of his story. It was another step in Allah's perfect plan. Yusuf, peace be upon him, had grown into a man of great character. Allah had blessed him with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He was surrounded by the wealth and comfort of the house of Aziz, but his heart remained connected to Allah. Then came a serious temptation. The wife of Aziz attempted to lead Yusuf towards something forbidden. But Yusuf refused. He chose obedience to Allah over temporary worldly desire. He knew that Allah was watching him, and he did not want to betray the trust placed in him. The situation became difficult, and Yusuf was eventually faced with a choice between committing wrongdoing and suffering because of his refusal. Yusuf chose righteousness. He preferred hardship over disobedience. This is one of the greatest lessons from his life. Sometimes doing the right thing does not immediately make life easier. Sometimes a person may suffer because they refuse to do something wrong. Sometimes people may misunderstand the truth. But Allah knows what is hidden inside every heart. Yusuf understood this. He did not abandon his principles simply because the situation became difficult. Instead, he turned toward Allah. The matter eventually became known among the people of the city. The women of the city spoke about what had happened, and the situation became even more complicated. Yusuf was placed under enormous pressure. Yet his faith remained firm. He prayed to Allah and expressed that prison was preferable to falling into the wrongdoing toward which he was being pressured. Think about the strength behind that decision. Yusuf was not choosing between comfort and comfort. He was choosing between worldly hardship and spiritual obedience. He knew that prison would be difficult. He knew that he might lose his freedom. He knew that his future could become uncertain. But he also knew that displeasing Allah was far worse. So Yusuf chose the path of faith. And Allah protected him. Eventually, Yusuf was sent to prison. From a human perspective, this seemed like another tragedy. First, he had been thrown into a well. Then he had been taken to Egypt. Then he had been placed in the house of Aziz. Now he was going to prison. One hardship after another. But there was something Yusuf did not know. Every one of these events was moving him toward a future that Allah had already planned. The prison doors closed behind him. But the doors of Allah's mercy never closed. Inside the prison, Yusuf did not become bitter. He did not spend his time complaining about his circumstances. He continued to worship Allah. He continued to behave with excellent character. And he continued to help the people around him. This is another beautiful lesson. A believer's character should not depend upon his circumstances. Whether a person is in a palace or a prison, they can still choose goodness. Whether life is comfortable or difficult, they can still remember Allah. Yusuf did not know how long he would remain in prison. He did not know what would happen to him. But he trusted Allah. During his time in prison, 2 young men were also imprisoned with him. They saw something special in Yusuf. They noticed his honesty and good character. One day, both men had dreams that troubled them. They asked Yusuf to explain their dreams. Before interpreting their dreams, Yusuf spoke to them about the oneness of Allah. This shows something very important about him. Even in prison, Yusuf continued calling people toward faith. His circumstances had not silenced him. His hardship had not destroyed his purpose. Instead, he used the opportunity he had to remind others about Allah. Yusuf then interpreted the dreams by the knowledge Allah had given him. One of the men would eventually be released and return to serving the king. Yusuf asked him to remember him when he returned to the king. But time passed. The man forgot about Yusuf. And Yusuf remained in prison. Imagine the patience required for such a moment. He had already suffered so much. He had been forgotten by his brothers. Now he had been forgotten by someone who could potentially help him. Yet Yusuf continued to wait. Allah's timing is different from human timing. We often want immediate answers. We want immediate relief. We want to know why something is happening. But Yusuf's story teaches us that sometimes Allah delays something because a greater moment is being prepared. Yusuf's prison years were not wasted years. They were years of preparation. Allah was developing his patience. Allah was preserving his character. Allah was preparing him for a responsibility far greater than he could imagine. Eventually, the king of Egypt had a remarkable dream. The dream troubled him, and the people around him could not provide a satisfactory interpretation. Then the man who had once been imprisoned with Yusuf suddenly remembered him. He remembered the man in prison who had correctly interpreted his dream. And at that moment, Yusuf's story began moving toward another major turning point. The man went to Yusuf and asked him about the king's dream. Yusuf provided the interpretation and explained what the dream meant for Egypt's future. His knowledge, wisdom, and honesty became known outside the prison. But Yusuf did not simply rush out of prison. He wanted the truth about the accusations against him to become clear. He wanted his innocence to be established. This demonstrates the importance of justice and truth. Eventually, the truth became clear. Yusuf's innocence was recognized. The man who had once entered prison as an innocent servant was now being considered for a position of great responsibility. Look at the journey. A well, a caravan, Egypt, the house of Aziz, a difficult test, prison, and finally, a path toward honor and authority. What looked like a series of disasters was actually a carefully unfolding plan. This is why the story of Prophet Yusuf is so powerful. It teaches us that hardship does not mean Allah has abandoned us. Sometimes hardship is part of the road to something greater. Yusuf did not know the future while he was sitting in prison. But Allah knew. Yusuf could only see the prison walls. Allah could see the entire journey. And this is a lesson we should remember in our own lives. When a door closes, do not assume that your story is over. When a difficult period begins, do not assume that Allah has forgotten you. When people misunderstand you, continue to hold on to the truth. And when you are tested, remember Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him. He chose faith when temptation surrounded him. He chose patience when life became difficult. He chose righteousness